There's a new study which shows an alarming trend of life expectancy falling among white Americans. The reasons point to drug use and addiction as a major factor in that downturn. Dana and I have wondered for months why drugs haven't become a more prominent campaign topic. Almost overnight, the drug debate has become a campaign issue. Here's a video of Chris Christie talking about his friend from law school that's gone viral.
A year and a half ago on a Sunday morning, Mary Pat and I got the call that we've been dreading forever, that they found him dead in a motel room with an empty bottle of Percocet and an empty quart of vodka. 52 years old. By every measure that we define success in this country, this guy had it. Great-looking guy, well-educated, great career, plenty of money, beautiful, loving wife, beautiful children, great house. He had everything. He's a drug addict, and he couldn't get help, and he's dead.
Notice the video is taken from a Christie speech delivered to the very important New Hampshire audience. And Jeb has made his daughter's drug addiction a campaign topic.
Look, I have some personal experience in this just as a dad, and it is the most heartbreaking thing in the world to have to go through. We over-medicate in this country. The gateway drug isn't marijuana anymore for heroin and cocaine or crack cocaine. I mean, there still is that gate, I guess, but prescription drugs now, we're way over-prescribing as a nation.
And who can forget Carly Fiorina's emotional debate comments about addiction?
I very much hope that I am the only person on this stage who can say this, but I know there are millions of Americans out there who will say the same thing. My husband Frank and I buried a child to drug addiction. So we must invest more in the treatment of drugs.
Now, Dana, I pointed out that you and I have been talking about this. Why isn't the drug debate, the addiction debate, been a bigger topic in 2016? It is now.
Yeah, so about 6 weeks ago when you were guest hosting O'Reilly and I had a chance to be on, I was asked, what do you think is one of the top stories of the week? And I said, what people are missing in New Hampshire is that nationwide this story has not been a big topic, but in New Hampshire the candidates were all reporting back that the first question that they get at all of their town halls is not about ISIS or immigration or the economy. It's about what can you do to help us with our drug addiction problem. For example, in Manchester, New Hampshire, a town of about 110,000 people, by August of this year, so within 9 months of the year, they'd had 350 overdoses already by that year. So you could wake up in the morning and you find out, oh my gosh, what happened to the prom queen? The prom queen now is an addict or she died. And so it is a topic that at least has gotten the attention of a couple of people, in particular, Hillary Clinton. She recognized that this was happening in New Hampshire, and about 6 weeks ago she came up with a proposal called, I think it was 10 years, $10 billion. Not enough, not actually getting to the root cause, but it helped her in New Hampshire to say, I have a solution. What you saw that was interesting is that you had three candidates there, all with very personal stories that I don't think we can say that they're using those stories to get ahead, but they are talking about them because in New Hampshire, say that you're asked about it, or Vermont or Massachusetts, and this is a problem that's growing across the country. One of the most important questions in a presidential election is, does the candidate care about people like me? Do they understand the problems of people like me, the problems that I'm dealing with? And if you have a personal story that you can bring to it, it's not easy to talk about someone that you lost, especially a loved one. But if you talk about it meaningfully, then you can start to get to something. But this issue, while it might seem small, like 10 years, $10 billion, it's actually on the minds of so many people that it's the first question they're asking. And I think that's why it makes sense to be a national topic.
And KG, Chris Christie comes from a state, New Jersey, who also has a massive drug problem. Heroin takes, I think on average, besides New Hampshire, of the top states, takes more people from drug overuse or overdosing on heroin. That's probably why he was doing it. It just so happens to be a primary state as well.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. It's really become just like a plague on our society and in this country. The devastating number of heroin-related deaths, people addicted to it. It's become more, cheaper, more affordable even than cocaine, and so this is a big problem. So heroin-related deaths jumped 39% from 2012 to 2013, and we see that number continuing to escalate. And some of the recent health studies and stuff, Dana, that you've brought up about people overdosing and dying from this kind of drug addiction. Obviously, it's a very important issue. It should get the attention, and I believe that it will. I think right now, though, the economy and some of the other issues are very prevalent in getting a lot of the attention because traditionally they do. There's a lot of things wrong, Eric, so they need to be tended to.
Kirsten, and again, let's talk about in context of what Dana said, that 3 of the GOP candidates have some very personal stories. Is this a good time? Is this a good issue to be bringing up now? And timing and to be bringing up on the campaign trail?
Yeah, I think it's a huge issue, and I think I'm amazed at how many people I personally know, frankly, who, in particular with their children. And that's what's amazing, that you have, suburban children who are addicted to meth. Who you're just thinking, what? Like, this is not, when I was growing up, this just was not something, I didn't know a single person who was addicted to drugs. So I think it's something that is really a huge problem. There's one thing that just comes to mind, though, is why? Why is this happening? And I think that that's the big question, because if you want to solve the problem, you got to figure out why it's happening.
And what they say, Tom, for the first time, life expectancies are dropping in a developed country. It's almost unheard of, and the causes they point to are drugs, alcohol, and suicide, but they're pointing the finger at prescription drug use as one of the major factors.
Well, and Jeb said we're over-prescribing. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, that blanket statement. Drugs help a lot of people. A lot of people are on a lot of drugs. We all know old people who are on drugs that weren't even invented when we were younger. So there's a lot of good news in the medical world. And Dana, I know you love good news, but the death rates across the board are way down. From 1969 to 2013, it's 43%. The death rate is, has improved 43%. So there is a lot of good news in the world of health. We have a great.
But what Eric's saying is that this is unprecedented.
Yes.
That in a developing country, you actually have this backsliding for what has been a pretty healthy group with a lot of money to be able to take care of them.
It's focused in on white males ages 45 to 54, and again, pointing towards a prescription drug.
Can I mention something else about that?
Heroin addiction, sure.
Okay, so if you have a chance, I know this is another reading assignment, but bear with me. So Ben Domenech at the Federalist wrote a piece today that is really, really good, and it gets to something we've talked about in the past. Charles Murray wrote a book a few years ago called Coming Apart. It's a book that's haunted me for a while because if you look at the numbers that you're talking about there, the mortality rate, the suicide rate, the addiction rate, the age group, and you look at some of the towns around America that have lost jobs, and you have disability insurance claims. Now, doctors want to help people. So they go to school, and their calling is to help people. So if someone says to them, I'm in pain, they want to help them. I don't know what the problem is on the drug addiction side of things. Thankfully, I don't have to have that problem, but I know that I could. So one of the things, there's actually legislation in front of Congress right now that says, okay, well, can we get doctors to be able to prescribe more of a different type of medicine that will help people get off the heroin? But you do have an additional problem that this problem, Eric, is not just a New Hampshire problem. It really comes to Vermont, New Hampshire, now upstate New York, Massachusetts, you have rural Kentucky, other places like that. It spreads almost like a virus. And the last thing I would say is a lot of people who end up with addiction, especially suburban parents who then end up having a child that they have to deal with, they get stigmatized, right? Because you think, well, as if drug addiction is your fault, therefore you don't get the help that you need. So it's a big issue. It'll be a big one in New Hampshire and probably across the country.
I want to just focus on one more thing, KG. What ends up happening now is disability insurance. People are losing their unemployment insurance and they're going on disability. And the study literally points to the fact that people are staying on disability and they can't afford other things, so they go to the hard drugs. They go right to the cheap. Heroin, by the way, is cheap. Hits of heroin now are $4 a hit.
Right.
Yeah, it's becoming affordable.
And so that's what people who are impoverished or have problems like this, they're going to turn to a drug like that. And unfortunately, they're moving in such a dangerous direction because it is so highly addictive. It's very readily available. And it's, it's cost effective for somebody who has a drug addiction or pain problems. It's really problematic. So people are turning to that even instead of like prescription drugs that they can't get.
Well, also the other thing that happens is you forum shop for prescription drugs. You go around to pharmacy, and the laws finally catch up with you and they say you're cut off. You can't get any more. Therefore, you turn to heroin because it's cheaper and it's the easiest way to get it.
Should the government get involved, or to what extent should the government be involved in policing this?
Well, I think they should try to figure out what's going on first and foremost. And then the people who did this study said that they didn't really know what was causing it, but did say that clearly there is a high level of both physical and psychic pain that's being medicated.
Right.
And so we have to try to understand, why are people in so much more pain than they were in the past? And I think that we could probably figure it out. I think we could probably come up with some ideas pretty quickly.
Tom, 90% of all people who tried heroin for the first time over the last 10 years were white. Surprising?
No, I don't think it's surprising. But I think I'm suspicious of federal solutions to this. A lot of these things are localized. You have certain drugs in certain areas of the country. So I think I would not be, do any of us trust the federal government to come up with a solution for America's drug problem? I feel like this is a local issue. Treatment is going to be very big. People are believing more in treatment than enforcement. But I think it's going to be local. It's going to be done by the states.
I don't think they necessarily want the government to get involved on a day-to-day basis, but they really want federal money.
Yes.
Because they are overwhelmed and they can't afford it at the state level.
We're going to have to leave it there. We had actually another